Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We are getting off the Bruce train, though I'm sure he will come up. We're going to talk about flipping the iceberg.
Yep.
We're going to talk about creativity. And I am so happy that my new friend is joining me. Charisse, am I saying
hmm
it correctly?
You are
All
saying
right.
it correctly. Good job.
All right. Charisse Walker, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be on. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I usually start at the beginning, but before I do that, tell me a little about yourself. Tell my audience a little about yourself.
I am a person that loves to overdo things and rush out and get things done. So I'm a realtor. I started investing in real estate about 10 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago. And I am also a mortgage lender and I coach people on how to do that. There's a story behind it as to why. A few years ago, I decided that I needed to get the word out and save marriages before they ever say I do. So that's how I wrote the book, Flipping the Iceberg. I love to travel. I have a podcast of my own called Unbreakable Mompreneurs. And my mission is just to help people find peace, happiness, and joy.
There's nothing wrong with that, and that's a nice mission statement. I always start at the beginning. Where did you grow up, and what kind of music was your family listening to when you were younger?
I grew up, my dad worked for the government, but I had the pleasure of actually being able to live mostly in California. So I've lived in Utah, where I live now. I lived in California, Oklahoma, New Mexico, California a few times actually. And my main thing though, I grew up in Bakersfield, California, and we were not allowed to listen to any of the 80s or 90s music when my dad was around because he hated it. So we got to listen to all the 60s, 70s music, anything oldies but goodies. So that's what we listen to.
No Buck Owens or Dwight
No.
Yoakam there in the Bakersfield Sound?
I- yeah, so my friend actually in high school, she lived in Buck Owens' house, but no, we did not listen. I actually hated country music until probably 3 or 4 years ago, and now I actually like it a lot.
The things that I, you might say the same thing, Teresa, is as you do your podcast themes, right,
Yes.
that people don't realize they are. And one of the things I see is that in general terms, and obviously I'm overly generalizing, but there's two types of people: the people that hated their parents' music
Right.
and rebelled as soon as they could. And then
Mhm.
when they hit 30, they went, wow, that Johnny Cash guy might be pretty good that dad loved, right? And the others that continued to embrace their parents' music, but just expanded their horizon.
Right.
If I was going to put you in one of the two categories, which one would you be?
Definitely embraced and expanded.
Okay,
Uh,
that's nice.
so yeah, I
Mhm.
can't tell you really a lot of artists, but I can tell you the songs. I can sing to the music and things. But for me to go, oh, that's so and so, I'm like, sorry,
Yeah,
but definitely embraced them.
yeah. Um, what did your dad just, he just embraced that classic music and had no interest in learning anything new?
Yeah, so my dad, he had quite the childhood. And so he it's a sad story actually. And then he served in Vietnam. So loud noises, loud music was
Okay.
not something he could handle, especially rap and anything that was like that, loud guitars and things.
Hmm.
So heavy hard rock. No, he couldn't handle that. And so I think that's just how I was raised, and I respected that. So when he wasn't around, we'd listen to the normal music or we'd
Right.
rock it or whatever. But when he was around, no, we respected it.
I had a Gen Z person on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she brought up something interesting that I had not thought about before, is her generation, and she was like, she's under 21.
Mhm.
Music was an individual thing for her
Okay.
because they had an individual iPod. And I was like, music was always a communal thing.
Yeah.
Growing up, I was born in 59.
Mhm.
So, like, my parents controlled the radio dial. So I listened to what they listened to. I watched the TV shows they wanted to watch, right?
Yes. On the
Unless it
13
was
inch
like, huh?
on the 13-inch screen TV. Keep going.
Yes, and right. Unless it was that, oh, okay, it's the once a year where The Wizard of Oz is coming on, so we're gonna let the kids watch that
Right.
or something special. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. I'm curious, you talked about you're someone who loves to embrace diversity
Hmm.
and doing different tasks.
Yep.
Where do you think that came from?
I think curiosity. I'm one of those. I had two older sisters, and I love my sisters. One of my sisters threatened me if I ever talk about her, then she'll do things to me. So I can't really
Okay,
go
so
into
we'll shout
detail.
out to
I
them,
know.
but
Right.
very
Right.
generically.
So I watched them and I learned from them, the good and the bad. And
Right.
so because of that, I think I learned growing up to watch and to learn and to try to understand what makes people tick. So when I went into college, that's what sociology was my major, and trying to understand why groups of people do what they do and trying to understand and embrace that. And I think that's where it started. I was always curious, and I'm much more of an observer, not as and to try to understand and accept people, because I really think everyone has, they all provide good. And so I don't know, it just fascinates me what makes people tick. So that's why.
Mhm. And do you just have this burning desire to do more?
Yeah.
And unlike some that have an idea, you actually have the discipline and the drive to follow through with it. Am I putting words in your mouth, or is that
Yeah. So I feel like you're leading up to what I did this weekend or something.
okay? Yeah, no,
So
but yeah.
yeah, okay. I'm shocked when you said that you're born in 59 because you look way younger than that. But
Thank you. That's very
so
sweet
I'm
of you to
turning
say.
No, I really mean
Mm,
it. So I'm turning
okay.
50 this year, and I
Okay.
had this whole bucket list of things I needed to accomplish. And so for the last 15 years, I've been trying to run a stinking marathon, and
Okay.
I have not been able to because my body has not allowed like I could go into all the issues. But finally this year I said, okay, my 50 year is coming. It's in November. And so I have to do this. And so I had a hysterectomy. I had major surgeries in December. I was literally in the bed for 6 weeks. And I hadn't run for probably 7 years. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to do it this year. And so I got to the 10K. I did great on the 10K. And then the next Monday, I couldn't even walk. So I had stage 2 tibia fractures in both legs. So it took me a couple
Mm.
of months to recover. And so then I started running 4 miles. My physical therapist is like, Charisse, don't train, just go run it. I'm like, you are insane. So I tried the 4 miles twice, major pain. So the next week I did 3 miles. And so this was last week. And so I just said, okay, I'm just going to do the marathon. So I signed up and ran it last Saturday. And so,
Without training?
yep. The most I had run all year was 6 miles, and that was 4 months ago. The most I've ever run in my entire life was 15 years ago. I did a half marathon, stress fractured my foot. So I couldn't do the marathon. And yeah, this week I went out. I had 3 hours of sleep because I couldn't sleep. I was so nervous. And then so many, that book, Series of Unfortunate Events, just happened to me. But I finished the race. I finished in under the time before they cut us off. And I did it, so I'm off my bucket list. And so I'm that type of person that if I set my mind to something, I'm absolutely going to accomplish it.
And you talked about being someone who observes, but where do you think that drive comes from?
I think I was born with it, to be honest with you.
Okay.
My mom said I came out just wide-eyed, just looking at everything, and I'm very intuitive, so I can just feel things. Like I knew the sex of every one of my babies before they were born, up to like 8 years before they were born. And so I think it's just that's part of me. That's who I am. It's kind of
Wow.
woo-woo. It's super woo-woo stuff that I don't really get into, but I think it's just I was born with it. I was born being curious. I was born having a love for everyone and trying to figure out how I can make them happy. And I think that's when I got into, started teaching college at 22 years old, and it was a whole bunch of guys. Imagine a 22-year-old, 40 pounds less than I am now, and teaching a whole room of guys.
Yeah.
And in a college where they were not there for the general education that I was teaching, they were there for the techie stuff. And so for me to be able to not only win their respect, but to win Teacher of the Year a few times, I think it's just trying to understand and realize that everybody needs a cheerleader on their side. And I think that's probably because I never had that growing up. I always felt like I was the outcast. I always felt like I didn't have any friends. So for me, I would go search out those people that were also outcast to try to help them feel better. So I think I just had that intuitive sense. There's another word for it that I totally can't think of right now, but oh, now it's bothering me. But that's
Empathy is your superpower. Empathy is your superpower. And
discernment.
building
Yeah. Yeah.
communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's lovely to hear.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Do One of the things I thought was interesting is you did talk about when you and I exchanged emails and you were going to be on the podcast. You talked about that music helps inspire you. So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about that. But I think it's interesting how you don't think of necessary artists
Right.
or it is just specific songs you latch into. So tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
Okay, so I laughed because I was running my marathon this week, and so I have hearing aids because again, I'm getting old. And so I thought, okay, I'm good. I just changed the batteries, all's well. And all of a sudden, not even halfway through, the left one dies. So it just dies.
Oh
So I'm
no.
like, oh, this is horrible because now I can't just listen out of my right ear. That makes me off. So I started late on the marathon. I don't know how I started late, but I started probably 11 minutes after the gun went. Everyone was
Okay.
gone except for a few people. And so
You wanted no crowding. You
I
wanted just to
guess,
go on
right?
your own
I just
pace,
wanted
right?
to have my own peace,
Yeah.
I guess psychologically. So I told my husband, like, meet me here, go get the batteries out of my car, do this and this. But I didn't even see him till like mile 19 or 20. So the race was almost over at that point. So I just put my phone in my shirt and I was blasting The Greatest Showman. And so
Okay.
the guys, the pacers, like, we're going like this the whole time. And so I'm blasting The Greatest Showman. And I don't know, for some reason, that movie, the music just super, like, really does speak to me. And so that's like the motivation. I look for uplifting things that really get people inspired. And if you look at two or watch two of those stories on YouTube, it's pretty incredible, like the story behind it.
Yeah.
So I love inspirational things like that. And so that's what I really connect to that. But then there's the others, like growing up, we always had to clean up the dishes afterwards. And there's two songs. It's the Shangri-La's Leader of the Pack, and sitting in a restaurant, she walked by. I don't even know the name of it, but nostalgic ones too growing up that I like.
So you did not have a playlist or anything to help. You weren't listening to music during your run?
No, so again, I was totally unprepared.
Yes, no.
So, and it started in the mountain. It was literally a mile vertical, mile descent that we ran. I was listening to YouTube, and when I got up there, I went, "Oh my gosh, I'm not even going to have internet connection because we're up in the canyons," and I totally forgot about that. So no, I listened to YouTube and whatever I could get to work. So Greatest Showman soundtrack. It was the 80s hits, the 90s hits, Maroon 5. A few of them I'm too embarrassed to even say, but it was just anything that had a beat that I could keep going to. That's what
Yeah.
I was listening to.
I One of the things that I was reading an article years ago and a runner ran into a pastor
Uh-huh.
and the pastor quoted it's not quite direct, but it's a Hebrews verse that says, "Let us run with endurance the race that's set before us." And I always thought that was a beautiful
Yeah.
because it means so much more than just whether it's a marathon or 5K
Mhm.
or fighting cancer
Right.
or looking for a job or
Mhm.
working on your marriage. So
Right.
yeah, that's well, congratulations.
Yeah.
You
Walking the
got your finisher shirt and your
Yeah,
medal and
you did.
good for you. So
Yep.
when are you doing your next one?
Never.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because it's like having a baby, right? So I have six kids, and
Yeah.
like right after you get done, you're like, oh. For me, I didn't have that feeling because I knew I was supposed to have another baby. Like it was horrible because I'm like, let me have this one. But the marathon, I'm thinking, okay, because there's so many series of unfortunate events that I wish, okay, this happened, this happened. Now I'll be prepared. And like you said, I fumbled a lot with trying to get YouTube, so I walked more than I probably should have because I was trying to fix my channel. And
Yeah.
so having that playlist, because the last time I put a playlist together was on an iPod, truth be
Hmm.
told. And
Yeah.
I should have charged that and ran with that, but I didn't.
One of my favorite Bruce Springsteen songs is a song called Better Days.
Mhm.
And I end up talking about it more in this. So listeners, jump ahead because you're tired of hearing me talk about better days.
Mhm.
But in the lyrics, the song starts out with, he says, "My soul checked out missing as I sat listening to the hours and minutes ticking away.
Mhm.
Yeah, just sitting around waiting for my life to begin while it all was just slipping away. I'm tired of waiting for tomorrow to come or for that train to come roaring around the bend. I've got a new set of clothes, a pretty red rose, a woman I can call my friend. These are better days." And to me, the song is enjoy the journey,
Right.
right? Don't wait for, and I think too many people, when I get the kid out of diapers, then I'm going to enjoy being a parent.
Yeah.
When I get that pay raise, then I'm going to enjoy when I retire, whatever, versus enjoying the journey. And my wife and I only had the one child.
Mhm.
And multiple years ago, because he's now an adult, but multiple years ago, she said, "Do you want to have another child?" And I said, "Not necessarily, but I would like to have another child and to enjoy the journey without worrying, because we worried about money and we worried about, like, did we know what the hell we were doing?" And just enjoyed that journey of having that with that background. So I could see how you might want to go, I may want to do another marathon while I don't worry about, I don't have the, I've got to get it before I hit 50 and just maybe enjoy that journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that I think I was looking forward to on this one on Saturday, but it was so, yeah, it was so rushed and I was so ill
Yeah.
prepared that I think, now that I know. And so it's okay because I had this from Couch to Marathon Instagram thing that I was starting to do, but it
Yeah.
never really took off. But I think you're right. You really do have to enjoy the journey. And I think for me, it was my freshman year of college when I got super, super sick that I
Okay.
realized at that point that I'm going to stop wishing and hoping for different things that you really do. And I'm very religious. And I think so for me, I understand that anyone can die anytime.
Right.
And I had a cousin die at, I think, 23. He was playing basketball and he waved at his girlfriend, or she waved at him. And before he could wave back, he was dead on the floor with a
Mm.
massive heart attack. And so I think it's those type of things where you realize life is so fragile and I will never be that type of person that I will live with regret. Like in high school when you like a boy and you wish, or a girl, and you wish you would have asked him out, or you wish you would have said this, or you wish. I just don't love, I don't want to live in that wish I woulda, coulda, shoulda. And also I think when I went through the divorce with my husband, I realized that for 15 years of my life, I was hoping and waiting for things to change. And so when we split, that changed in me, like a switch that I'm not going to hope and wait anymore. I'm not going to be this eternal victim. Like I look at that person and I just think how pathetic I was. And I was probably miserable to be around as a person. And maybe that's why I didn't have a lot of friends or whatever, because I would hate myself. And I don't mean the word hate, but I would not want to be around myself because
Yeah.
those eternal victims, like the martyrs, it's just why are you letting people control your life? And so it's take control, take charge. And that's my mission. That's why I wrote the book as well, that you don't have to be the martyr and the victim. And if you are, stop it. Either accept your life as you are, or you have the power to change it, but stop. Just stop. And if you think you're doing things for the kids, or if you think you're not, that's just an excuse. And you're not being selfish if you're going to, like for me to go run that marathon, it was a huge bonding moment for my family. Like for the first time, and I would say almost a year, all of my kids were there and we actually had a good time and we were celebrating. We were happy. Like that to me meant more than finishing that race. And that was a long race. But that moment where we were able to go out to lunch, and that was like, oh my gosh, this is why we live. This is the whole point. This is
Yeah.
what's important.
So you've mentioned a couple times on the book. So talk to me a little bit, and what was the origins of, why did you decide this was something you needed to pursue and write?
Yeah. So when I ran nursing schools and I ran a college that had 22 programs, but nursing was a big one of them. And I just remember a lot of the nursing teachers and the nursing students. The teachers, and I don't mean to stereotype, but I'm going to.
Okay.
The teachers that were there were either they'd never been married or they were married but never got remarried because they're divorced. They're bitter, they're angry, they hate men. And so I watch them and I'm like, oh, that's so negative. You're in a helping profession. How can you get there? And then to have all these nurses and students that they were married, and 2 years later they were all getting divorced right before they graduated. I'm like, you guys, what's going on? And so I watched the disintegration of marriage, and I've watched the disintegration of families. I think I noticed that my senior year of high school because I won an award writing about that, a scholarship writing about families. And like I said, I'm very religious. And when I went through my own divorce, I saw what happened and I saw the patterns. I went through counseling. I saw what happened to my kids. And I'm like, I never want to have to do this again. And I'm married to my second husband or my current husband. And there's a pattern of repeat. He's a great guy. We're still married, but there's things that young people, especially nowadays, our culture is changing where people don't want to get married anymore. 70% of kids now live together before they get married. And that's considered dating. I don't get that because again, I'm religious. I see this family disintegrating, and because of that, I see our nation disintegrating. And I truly think if parents were to teach better. So because of that, I wrote this book called Flipping the Iceberg. And I think it's because when I first got married, my husband, he's one of those that if he were to come, everyone would love him. He walks in a room, he's energetic, he's outgoing. And what's my problem, Charisse? Why are you divorcing him? But you didn't have to live with him behind closed doors. And so 90% of an iceberg sits below the water, 10% sits above. So if you flip the iceberg before you get married, then you can identify who this person is. And I didn't know that person when I got married. And so I think there's two issues. The first one is we all endured some type of trauma in our lives. That could be from our parents, that could be from our neighbors, that can be from our friends, that can be from church. I don't care what it is. We all have trauma. And if
Sure.
we have unresolved trauma, it sits like an iceberg waiting to tear into our relationship later. And a lot of times we don't know, we have triggers. So if we don't know what those are, we can't fix it before we get married. And that a lot of times affects the relationship. Then once we can identify that and heal ourselves, then we can go into now, who am I marrying? And so now you can start to ask questions and get to know that person. Because a lot of times people they get married just because, and then, oh, I didn't know who I married. And that's a problem. So you flip their iceberg and you climb their iceberg together and you really make sure it's the right person. So the book is like flipping is an acronym and iceberg is an acronym. Flipping's for the first part, your trauma. Iceberg is the second. And there's a workbook that accompanies it to go through exercises, to go through activities. And for me, if it doesn't help anybody else, which it has, because I've already had lots of feedback, but it healed me and it healed my marriage. And so we're much stronger now because of that. And we're married. I'm writing a second book for the married couples, but I really do think that if young adults and people who were divorced, if they read the book before they actually get married or jump into a long-term relationship, it really would save their marriage. I really truly believe that.
What are, if you, I hate to generalize, but is there themes, and I hate to use the word mistake, so let's say missteps that your common pitfalls? Are there themes?
Yeah, I think one of them is that they have such a need codependency. And I was that person. Definitely
Okay.
codependent. Like you're not comfortable by yourself. You're not comfortable. You're looking for happiness somewhere else. People who have split homes, which is so many now, especially young kids, that they're looking for their daddy, like a female is looking. So, for example, my daughter, I hate to get into a lot of it, but I will. She doesn't have that relationship with her dad because she doesn't. I won't get into that, but she's dating all these people she keeps dating. She won't talk to her dad. She doesn't like her dad, but yet she's dating her dad every time.
Yeah.
And it's, do you not see this? Like you have to see this before. And so it's like everything you don't like about your dad, you love about this person. Like it doesn't make sense. It's the same thing. And
Yeah.
so just trying to identify. So those are some of the things is that you're trying to fill a void that is never going to be filled until you heal that part, until you figure that out. And so those are that's some of the things I think. I think also there's a form of abuse emotionally, physically, sexually. And when people have had that trauma, I think that they tend to repeat unhealthy behaviors because of that. And those two are just two huge ones that I've seen a lot in a lot of the different couples and things and people that I've studied, I've researched, I've witnessed, I've experienced, and being true and honest. Like, what does a commitment mean, really? And a commitment, I don't think people understand what a commitment means anymore. And what, like, pornography is a big thing we'll talk about. That is so rampant nowadays. And so people don't think that it's cheating, or they don't think that it's really effective. And if you look at the science behind it, it's worse than all of the drugs that you can take combined, because of all the different things that happen in the brain because of that, the patterns. And those are the things that I see that are just really detrimental.
So I'll flip it. I'll not the iceberg, but I'll flip the question. What are positive things that you see people do consistently that are successful in a marriage?
Communication, like if they've learned how to communicate with each other, and that's a big one, that people, and in an effective way, because an understanding that people talk to each other differently. And we talk about the 5 love languages. I was going to give him credit. It's in my library of books, but
Okay, yes.
oh my gosh, I totally just forgot his name. But I really do think that people do speak in different ways. And so what's important to you might not be important to me, but that's okay. We just have to make sure that we communicate, and being willing and honest enough with each other, and trusting in each other enough that you can communicate. That's the big thing. Because if you can tell each other, I'm really angry and I'm feeling upset and I'm not quite sure why, or this is what's getting to me. Or if I can identify in my husband, hey, this is a trigger. You keep getting upset because of whenever you see or hear this comes up. So I think communication. I think another thing is giving and receiving. That's the G in flipping, for iceberg, actually. But it's, people talk about they didn't give 100%. Nobody's going to give 100% all the time.
Right.
And you're not going to give 100%, but maybe I look at it as a roller coaster. So when you're up, your partner may be down. And so that's your job, to give more. Like right now, it's hard to walk on my feet. I'm using crutches. So my husband is my feet right now, but then he's sick. And so if he gets sick, it's constantly, it's a giving and a receiving. What can we be doing it's a balancing act. And sometimes it might take a couple months because somebody's out of commission. So that's your job, to step up. And then the next time, their job is to step up. And so people are so selfish right now. I think that's the big thing. If you can get over the selfishness, that is a huge hurdle. And if 2 people want to work on it, it can work. But if one person's constantly going, I think of it like a marathon with a 50-pound weight attached. There's no way it's ever going to work.
So my wife and I hit 40 years marriage this past June. And when people talk to us, there's a couple of things. We dated 4 years before we got married.
Yes.
That was big. And because of her faith, we did not have sex before we got married.
Kudos to you. 4 years. That's tough. So good job.
Yeah. And so every once in a while, she would say, I feel guilty about that again. No, you don't. No, you don't. You do not feel guilty because you do that 23-year-old Jesse, that was not, you owe it to him not to be guilty. Stick with it. And we've picked through a few things. One of the things that we through the years is one of our rules is you can't say I told you. So if you think we shouldn't buy a new car, you can't wait till we're having struggles making the payments to say I knew we shouldn't have bought that car. No, the time to have said is before we said yes.
I love that.
Now, we both might go, looking back, we should have seen this, and we both made a mistake, and that was important to us. The other thing we tell people all the time is it's never 50-50. It's 90-10.
Yes.
It's 20-80.
Mm-hmm.
And you hope over the long run,
Yes.
you end up 60-40, 50-50, 40-60, right?
Yeah.
You hope it balances out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that there's going to be times when Linda is stronger than I am, or I'm stronger than Linda, and we work through that. Yeah, that's good. That's really good advice. I remember we dated so long, and so we would just talk and talk and talk. And so when we went to our engagement encounter, because she was Catholic and I converted, it's this whole weekend where you discuss marriage, right? And the couple leading it came, y'all are having a strong weekend. And Linda's, that's because we've spent the past 4 years talking about all this crap. So yeah, that's good for you. Want to work on a second book?
Yes, I actually finishing up the workbook. That's why I haven't been pushing a lot. But yeah, the second book is after the I do. And so it's now that you're married, now what? So I realized like the book that I was writing, I had actually written, I think it was 75,000 words. And my editor, we only go to 60. So you can pay 7 cents a word after that, which I did the math. I'm like, I'm not going to do that,
Yeah.
or you can cut the book. And so as I read through it again, I went, wait a second, there's like actually two different books here. One is the before they I do, the other is now that you're married type thing. So
Right.
definitely going to write a second one. And that one's for couples who are married. And I think the advice I'd give for couples as well is when you're constantly saying, then let's just get divorced, like the divorce word should never come up in a conversation,
Yeah.
because that means that you're opening the door to that possibility. And now you're starting to consider that as an option. And if you just don't say that and you just say, okay, how can we work through this? The hard part is I have been divorced and never thought I would be. I truly never thought. And I fought, but I had been diagnosed with MS and that my body was failing. And I probably would be dead today if I was still married to him. Because once I
Hmm.
got divorced from him, went and had all the tests again, I do not have MS. So how
Odd.
does that happen? Like when you have the spinal tap and you have all the what's it called? The curse or I can't even think tonight, but it's basically the bands that are there that show up.
Yeah.
Like you can't argue that. And so then all of a sudden now, after 6 months after we're divorced and everything settles, because we were separated for a long time, I was hoping he'd come back around, but he didn't. Then it was gone. So what stress can do to a body is incredible. And that's a whole issue. There's a story, but I just think that if two people are willing to work and they want to make it work, and I think that's why yours is probably still so strong, is you guys spent 4 years talking and
Yeah.
telling each other how you felt and telling what you liked, what you didn't like. You took time to get to know each other. And a lot of people, if they jump into the marriage, they don't. And I look at J Lo, and
Yeah.
really, we're going through this again.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. My I my brother was very active in AA.
mhm.
And when he passed a couple of years ago, but when he was talking, he said, and it's an old joke, he says most AA couples, the third date involves a U-Haul, right? And he said the idea that my brother and his now wife dated 4 years before making that commitment. I did used to joke that the first year we were dating, her dad and mom were like, Jesse's a pretty good kid. In the second year, Jesse, when Linda gets married, I think that he'd be a good, I hope it's someone like Jesse. In the third year's, really think it'd be perfect if Jesse and Linda got married. In the fourth year, enough already. So that's for hilarious. Let's flip over to the podcast. Talk to me a little bit about that.
So Unbreakable Mompreneurs came about because I used to be a single mom and 4 kids. And I called my sister because my kids, it was like year-round school back then. So
Yeah.
not during just the summer, it was like 12 weeks on, 3 weeks off or something, I don't remember. And so I had just started opening up a college, like completely from ground zero, opened up
Okay.
a college. And so I needed her help because it was a month after I got that job. And so I said, hey, what are you doing for 2 weeks? And she goes, oh, nothing. And so I said, can you come up and help me with the kids? She's sure. Unbeknownst to me, she was deciding if she was going to leave her husband as well. So the 2 weeks lasted 9 months. And so I was supporting my kids and her. And then she brought her daughter up. And so I was taking care of her. And so it, I saw that. I saw the struggle that women have where they feel like they're stuck in a relationship or they feel like they're in a marriage where they're unfulfilled because their whole life they're trying to take care of their kids and they're sacrificing for the kids, yet you shouldn't just get rid of that, because believe it or not, one of the top age groups right now in the US are baby boomers. Crazy.
Yeah.
I can give a whole bunch of theories as to why, but when you live your whole life for your kids and now your kids move out, now what do? You don't have a life, you don't have a relationship with each other. And so my goal is to help women, and they can be men too. I'm not one of those sexist people, I don't care. But if you like call a group of people, it's more likely it'll take off. So
Sure.
help women find their passion and to be able to have the confidence. So we talk about business, we talk about relationships, we talk about being a mom, we talk about all that type of stuff that goes into running a business and what you should do when you do run a business or And like from startups to scaling to women who have sold their business to Bill Gates, actually. So we've had lots of different guests on that any type of advice we can give, we give.
How long you been doing it?
A year, but
Okay.
really significantly for the last 6 months. So I was doing it kind of just talking for a while and then
Mhm.
started having guests about 6 months ago.
What has surprised you about doing it?
The amount of amazing people there are in this world that they're so amazing. And people are just so free to give advice, to talk about things, to tell, hey, don't do this, or here's a pitfall that I should avoid. And so I think for me, I've just enjoyed meeting so many people all over the world that it's just been incredible.
Hmm.
And it takes a lot of work. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that want to be on your show, and it takes a lot of time behind the scenes trying to put stuff together. And it's a passion project at this point.
Hmm. I love doing it, and one of the things that happens to me is I get pushback that I don't have anything to share. And
Oh,
I go, no, everyone has a story. And my
yes.
whole goal is to capture as many of those as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
Mhm.
What haven't you done that you want to do now that you've checked your marathon off the list?
Yeah. So the next thing I want to do, I actually want to be speaking on stages and sharing a story of hope. It's called Moms Finding Hope, actually. And there's two things. So that's one of them is making sure that I can inspire other women to realize that it doesn't matter. Like I have horrible stories and they're not as horrible as other people, but we, like you said, we all have a story that we can glean from and learn from. And I want to be able to inspire women to say, you know what, I can do this. And me running that marathon, like the last 5 miles, whew,
Yeah.
wow. When you're at your breaking point, you think both of your feet are broken and there's nothing left in the tank. Your hands are so swollen, you can't even move. Like seriously, they were so swollen. And I stopped just everything, just, oh, wow. And to realize I'm so close, but so far still. And so I think you can do it. You just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I did it for that reason,
Yeah.
because now I have a story and I can describe it and I can explain that really when all of the things were against me, let's talk about they give out these things called goo and it's
Yeah.
supposed to energize you. And every 2 miles, they were supposed to have goo at every station. I got started late. So the only station that had goo, the only station was station 11, which is 11 miles into the race. I had
Yeah.
had nothing. I had had 2 hours of sleep. And so that's my goal is to get up on stages and share with women. And I can talk about relationships, I can talk about real estate, and I can talk about, oh my gosh, just make business. And because I have all three of those that I've done. I've built businesses. I've been in and out of relationships and being a mom. And I have a wide array of different things I can share and teach about. And so that's one of the things. The other one is it's a nonprofit that I'm just planning to start. I used to be afraid of old people. When I was young, I got slapped across the face at a rest home and was traumatized. And I used to fear death. And so being around old people scared me. But now I love them. And when you talk about a story and you talk about the spunky part, just these people are going into all these nursing homes and just staring at the wall because no one's around. And so I want to go in and make a wish. There's a name
Yeah.
for it, which I'm not going to give away till I've actually set up my business, but make their wishes come true. Go find somebody and say, what's on your bucket list? What can we check off before they pass away? And
Yeah.
so those are my two next things on my list.
I love it. I love it. Charisse, what haven't I asked you that I should have?
You sent me an email about
Yes, I will
time.
end. We will end with the Mary question, but before we get to that, is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't?
I think honestly, you've asked a wide range of, it's been a great conversation that I really appreciate. And the why.
That makes me very happy when someone says that makes me very pleased. So thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to give you a chance in a minute to tell people how to reach you and think about some final thoughts. But if you are a fan of Charissa's book or her podcast and you are checking it out, thank you so much for joining us. She has made you very proud. I end every podcast with what I call the Mary question. And what that is, Jay Armstrong, who is now retired, but when he was teaching, he was an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. And he would give his students the lyrics to Bruce Springsteen's song Thunder Road. And they would discuss the lyrics. They would talk about the themes, the imagery Bruce uses. And then at the end of the class, he would ask his students, does Mary get in the car? So that is your homework. And there is no right answer. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
Oh, so when I listened to it and I read the lyrics and everything, I thought, absolutely, yes, she does, because I'm that adventurous person. And I would say, yes, she's going to go. And I would say, yes, she's going to get in the car. But
Okay.
I would hope that she would have a few stipulations.
Okay.
Because,
You want to share them?
yes,
Okay.
because he actually says, oh, I should have had the lyrics with me like in front, but he says, the ride is not free.
Yeah.
And so there's strings attached to it. And he talks about how we're going to basically get in the back seat and do the jiggy.
Yeah.
So because of who I am, I would absolutely say yes, let's go for it, because I've seen people, my husband comes from a small town, and it is true. People, not even just in small towns, they can be in large towns, but sometimes people get stuck and they never leave their city. They never leave where they grew up. They never go out and explore. The world is huge and massive, and you could explore and you could have so much more. So I love that he's giving her the opportunity and he's wanting her to come with him. I
Yeah.
don't like that you're all right, but that's okay. So it's not like he's totally infatuated and she's his one. But I think that it's cool that he's, you know what, take this journey with me, and they'll probably fall in love together, because it's not just about looks, right? But they're not going to have sex right when they get in the car, and there's
Right.
not going to be these attachments. What do you want from me? And I think that they need to have that conversation. What do you expect from me? Because I'm not going to just be your notch on a belt and just to go.
Yeah, so a couple of things. First off, great answer. By the way, my wife says he calls her ugly. Of course, she doesn't get in the car. I believe, and in my mind, that Mary herself is always talking bad about her looks. Like oh, I'm not that beautiful. Oh, no one would want me anymore. And so I picture he is saying that the
Mm-hmm.
same way that a salesperson would meet the objection.
Oh,
I
okay.
know you aren't beautiful, but hey, you're all right. I love the lyric you talked about, right? Like it says, I've got this guitar and I've learned how to make it talk. And my
Yeah.
car's out back if you're ready to take that long walk.
Right.
From your front porch to my front seat, the door's open, but the ride ain't free.
Yeah.
And I know you're lonely for words that I ain't spoken. Tonight will be free. All the promises will be broken. And I think that's an interesting thing. What is that price?
Yeah.
And I think you could make the argument the price is that we're going to have to break away whatever promises we made to other people and
Mm-hmm.
make promises to ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed the song and I'm glad you had a wonderful answer. All right, if someone wants to reach you, how can they?
I try to make it as easy as possible. So it's my name, Charisse Walker, CHARISEWALKER.com. So from there, you can go to Fly Free as a retiree, where I teach you how to create passive income, which has taken us from $400,000 in the hole to multi-million dollars worth of properties that we have rentals and we have passive income. So when my husband lost his job, actually a couple months ago, we were okay because we had passive income coming in. He is re-employed now, and so I can teach you that. You can listen to the podcast, you can book me to speak or come talk, and then also just find my book. So any of those four things that you need or that you want, you can find it there.
Very nice. Any final thoughts before I let you go?
I just think that it's wonderful, first of all, that Bruce Springsteen, he is an amazing icon in America, and his lyrics are deep. Like you really could probably do an entire, like I used to teach college, I could teach 4 hours, probably 12 weeks of this, and you
Yeah.
can talk about it, you can debate it. And so I think that it's fantastic that you're bringing people together through music and making people think and getting to know people and having their stories shared. So I just want to tell you thank you. And listeners, subscribe, because he loves this, and it's something that he's doing because he does enjoy it and he wants to get people's messages out. So thank you.
Thank you. That's well said. Please, everyone, go to the website, reach, talk, look at it. And I am so glad you joined me. We will end with a little bit of Bruce lyrics. In the days of despair, you can grow hard till you close your mind and empty your heart. And if you find yourself staring into the abyss, hold tight to your loved ones and remember this. This shield will protect your sacred heart. This sword will defend you from what comes in the dark. Should you grow weary on the battlefield, do not despair. Our love is real. Thank you, Charisse. Thank you,
Thanks.
listeners. Everyone, be safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.